My name is Bryan. I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Ishii Systems. And joining me is Neil Singh, Manager at HirePeak. Today we'll be discussing the secrets of interviewing bias. But before I go ahead and tell you what the secret is, let's start with a quick story. A few months ago, at a company speaker event, our CEO went on stage and began speaking about the importance of hiring the right people. He mentioned a quote by Jim Collins, who said, "Get the right people on the bus and then figure out where to go." And this was his secret to success after being in business for over 20 years. And just a very quick background, who is Ishii? Ishii Systems is a product services company and development company with experience in banking, insurance, pharmaceuticals, media. It's headquartered in New Jersey with offices around the globe. And who are some of the clients that we work with? Well, we've worked with clients in all industries, all different sectors, and we've realized that hiring is a challenge. And not only do we face it, but so do our clients. The CEO mentioned that over the past the company has hired hundreds of great employees, but once in a while has made some bad hiring decisions. It does happen. And it can create a really tremendous impact on the company. So the 3 points he highlighted would decrease unnecessary turnover, increase cost. See, at the end of the day, a bad hiring decision can cost a salary. That's a significant cost. See, hiring is evolving, interviewing is evolving, creating an increasingly competitive environment where people are truly the most fundamental resource. This evolution also means that hiring mistakes are much more impactful, which can, again, reduce the morale, cause unnecessary turnover, and increased cost. So what's the issue? So if hiring mistakes are so destructive, why do they happen so often? How can we prevent them? Ishii went on to try and solve this issue. And to solve a problem, you must first know where it originates. So after reaching out to our clients, sitting with recruiters and interviewers and hiring managers, we began to see a pattern. And we began to see where this issue lies. So the 3 main points that we saw repeatedly were this sort of lack of structure and inconsistency in the process, knowledge gaps and inability to evaluate effectively, and data-driven decision-making. Most importantly, bias. You see, bias is throughout the whole process. Let me dive deeper and tell you what we mean. What is bias? Well, as stated by encyclopedia.com, bias is a partiality towards preconceived response based on structure, phrasing, or tenor of questions asked in the interviewing process. First, you have to understand what interview bias is before you can manage it. It can be one of the most challenging to master. Partly, nobody likes to talk about it. Interesting, I mentioned to a colleague I was going to talk about bias on this webinar. He said, uh-oh, people don't really want to hear about their biases. That's a valid point. Just to give you a few types of biases. Here's a sense, right? Here's some different biases that can really creep into the recruitment process. Negative effect, halo effect, stereotyping, contrast effect, nonverbal bias, cultural noise, and on and on. Does your recruitment team, interviewers, hiring managers, do they know these inside and out? Do they know how to prevent them? Of which, let's dive a little deeper into this interview bias. Now, who has interview bias? Well, a group of universities, including Harvard and Yale, had a valuable research project about interviewing bias. which indicates the bad news is we all have it, whether we realize it or not. See, the problem with interviewing bias, it affects our natural perceptions of an interview. It even influences the candidate's response. And it leaks into the feedback, making it more difficult for hiring managers to make an informed decision. So if you want to know a little bit more about bias, we're going to have a whole bunch of free resources at the end that you can actually take a Harvard online test for yourself. But more about that later. Importantly, what can we do about bias? Well, at Ishi, we know that our employees are busy with work, personal lives, backlog of things to take care of, as I'm sure many of you are as well. And as a product services company, we've been hiring great talent for 20 years. We wanted to leverage what we've learned over that process and from our clients and from the research. We created HirePeak. So HirePeak is an innovative interviewing platform that removes that bias. So you can identify, evaluate, compare, and hire the best candidates. So whether your role is recruitment or whatever your role is in the process, HirePeak was designed to tackle some of those biggest issues in recruitment and remove that bias. Let me explain what we mean. She has three core principles: structure, content, data. Structure. You need to create a consistent process, focus on the requirements for the position, design the interview process, ensure that all the interviews are being conducted effectively. The content. Always know what to ask, not to ask. Always be prepared. Data. Having those analytics and reports to dive into specific interviews or get a higher level picture of the organization. We're going to dive deeper and really explain what this means, starting with structure. So what we found and realized, enforcing structure and consistency minimize the bias. This way, all the candidates now go through the same process. So they're asked the same questions, interviewed on the required skills for the position. Let me explain how we do this. You can now drill down, design the interview process, set the number of rounds, the question sheets, specific skills, whatever metrics you want to cover, and it can be customized, but structured. See, by using this structure, you can remove that bias and interview with more confidence, compare candidates apples to apples. So whether inconsistent questioning bias, or contrast effect, or halo effect, whatever the bias is, see, this consistent structure is the key to tackling all those biases with ease and peace of mind. See, it's when you're interviewing outside of the system, kind of winging it off resumes, that can lead to trouble. And by trouble, I mean mistakes, hiring decision mistakes. So it brings us to the first master tip. Define a process, ensure that all the candidates follow the process to prevent that favorability or bias. The next key principle is content. Look, I think we all know there's a war out there for talent. And today's knowledge economy demands increasingly skilled professionals. You need to assess those different skills. Identify great candidates, but do it without bias and negligence. See, studies show that negligence, bias hiring, can have verdicts of up to $40 million, and employers lose the majority of the time. So let's take inconsistent and questioning bias. So this is just one type. Essentially, it means asking these different questions of your candidates. See, with HirePeak, we provided over 3,000 SME vetted questions across industries, 100 different skill sets. You can assign question sheets. You can also have different template positions to guide your interviewers on what to cover, what not to cover. Most importantly, have everything on record to prevent that negligence. It truly makes it easier to handle this. Let me show you what the scorecard is. See, HirePeak uses a scorecard. It's kind of like a report card for your kids, but it's a report card for candidates. Instead of covering math and science, it checks proficiency on the required skills for the position, whether it's hard skills, soft skills, whatever metrics. See, the scoring becomes now much more objective. It's not 1 to 10 or 1 to 5. It's not like an arbitrary number, right? It's rating candidates exceptional, correct, part. Now let the technology use a rating algorithm that calculates the score for you. Now candidates are compared against the same metrics. Now check out the prep screen. So we've seen interviewers, they face what we call a context switch. I can guarantee it's happened to many of you. So you're getting pulled out of whatever it is what you're doing to do something else, and in this case, to conduct an interview. See, with HirePeak, the interviewer now has the questions, the answers, difficulty rating, the resume, all on one screen, all there at their fingertips, providing everything that they need to conduct that interview and preventing that bias. So this brings us to master tip number 2. Use vetted question sheets, which provide specific topics and skills to cover in the interview that are really tied to that job rec. The final principle, data. You ever feel overwhelmed with the amount of information thrown at us? I know I do. How about when it comes to sifting through all that interview feedback? Like, how do you compare candidates quickly and accurately? Like, how do you handle all that biased feedback from different people, different rounds? See, having insight into the hiring process is essential. So with HirePeak, you can have the insight and more easily manage the process. You can now manage your interviews, manage your interviewers, see the number of interviews conducted, get the average ratings, what topics were covered, even popular questions asked. You can manage your recruiters by tracking the performance on candidates per position. Also track average number of days to fill a position. Overall efficiency. So you can manage your candidates by benchmarking them against other candidates. Put them side by side and compare skill proficiencies. So no more wondering if the interview is completed. See, if a position is filled, see it in real time. You can even press your managers. Let's say they call, they need the feedback, no problem. You get instant feedback, updates, and results. You can get reports, you can email it, print it out. So hiring is evolving, interviewing is evolving. So must your process. And now you can benchmark that process for improvement. Like, see what's working, what isn't working. Like, have all the data now in one place so you can improve and evolve your process with a flexible technology as your organization scales. So remember, when you break down the skills, now you can more closely tie it to the job rec. And the system, it generates these reports that are easy to read and understand. It's going to make your decisions easier, allowing you to compare multiple candidates. Again, apples to apples, side by side, but now with measured feedback, without that bias. Bear with me 1 second. See here, we're looking at a candidate report. See, there's all different reports, but this particular report, David Smith. You can see recruiter summary, resume parsed information. See all the feedback from each interview. You can even see the non-biased 7.5 score. You can see David is strong in one skill, but lacks another. So for example, he's very strong in Java, but not in design patterns. So you also have feedback. It can be more structured in the way you want to structure the feedback, or a subject SME vetted way. See, today's knowledge economy demands increasingly skilled professionals. But the problem, many of them lack the specific skills that you require, while others may have transferable skills. Skills learned, let's say, in another industry that can be quickly applied to their new role, so they can really hit the ground running. I mean, the best way to find these diamonds in the rough is to break down the competency skills individually. Again, see where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are. So gathering and managing all that feedback by itself is a pain point. Analyzing it, making actionable insights, it can be challenging. How can we leverage technology to guide us in making those decisions? So that brings us to mastery tip number 3. Using data and technology to do the heavy lifting for you when it comes to gathering and managing all that feedback. Let's take a quick break from all that detail. Let me share with you a quick story. See, Cam is a partner in an accounting firm, CPA, over 25 years. He was surprised and frustrated because one day he discovered that one of the employees was a real drain on the team in terms of engagement, productivity, overall morale for the department. See, Cam thought for a moment, and he remembered that this bad employee, well, he interviewed well. He actually left a really great first impression. And he received mostly thumbs up from the interviewers who felt the same way. However, Cam realized he didn't have a consistent structured process. He didn't have that expert content. He didn't have reports and analytics to guide his hiring decisions. See, now, we all know that bias plays a big part in the process. Cam said he was only using spreadsheets and just question sheets at the time. See, he really felt the pain of a single bad hire. He better understood then that a bad hire, he said, is like a virus. You see, a bad virus is dormant and can infect the other cells. Well, a bad hire is dormant and will infect the team, department, and even spread throughout the company. The only option he had at the time was terminating the employee, which I think we know it's extremely uncomfortable, followed by a recovery, which is stressful, overwhelming. It took, in this case, months to replace, and then train that new person. See, the reality was, a bad hire, it's a waste of money, caused unnecessary stress and drama, and at that point he realized how painful it can be for other employees. See, if he was able to use some of these master tips that we talked about, combined with HirePeak, it really would have improved Cam's and the company's bottom line. So let's sum up things. At the end of the day, when it comes to hiring, and there's a massive amount of research about this, how people, most of the time, make up their minds in the first 5 minutes, like that. And after making this initial assessment, they spend the rest of the time interviewing and working to confirm those assessments. So, for example, if they like you, they're looking for reasons to like you more. If they don't like you, they don't like your handshake, awkward introduction, or any one of those biases we touched on, well, the rest of the interview is essentially over because they spend the rest of the time looking for reasons to reject you. Again, whether they realize this or not, this is like a very natural human instinct, but not good for hiring. So today we've learned some tips on how to handle it. Really quickly, consistent structured process to minimize the risk of that unintentional biases impacting the decisions we make. Remember, a consistent process of asking the same interview questions of all candidates, evaluating them against the same standard criteria, helps ensure that you're making apples-to-apples comparisons of each candidate. Number two, use the vetted content so that the interviewer, and make sure basically that the results are more tied to the job relevant criteria and data. I mean, let's use 21st century technology to gain deeper insights into the hiring process. So, whether you're a hiring manager, an interviewer, a recruiter, or senior management, let the system analyze the data and provide you with the relevant analytics and reporting to easily make your life easier to manage the process, make those difficult decisions easier. So ultimately, you can find the best candidate with the right skills for the right position, and even those diamonds in the rough. So remember, like our CEO said in that quote, you get the right people on the bus, then figure out where to go. So at this point, I'd love to turn it over to Neil, who's going to share some more information about those free resources I said, and some more information about the pilot program.
Great, thanks, Bryan. Hopefully everyone enjoyed that presentation. We will actually be sending this PowerPoint out, as well as links to all of the resources to your email addresses. So right now, I'd just like to go over a little bit about the few points that we wanted to touch upon. So the first thing was, what are the most common interview bias mistakes? And today we learned that first impression error and inconsistency of questioning are the most common bias mistakes. What can we do to prevent them? Well, we learned that structure, content, and data go a long way. And if you go back to the presentation, you'll see the three mastery tips, and we'll share those with you guys again, but that's how you would essentially prevent them. How does this impact you, your managers, and the organization? Well, we realize that bad hires cause decreased morale in the company. It causes turnover. It causes increased cost because now you're spending time replacing that person, and not to even mention the loss of productivity. How can you become a master interviewer? Well, if you combine skills, the experience, and the right tools, such as HirePeak, you can definitely become a master interviewer. Yeah, having the right tools is very important. And we'll actually be talking a little bit about the free pilot program. So the pilot program is for HirePeak, and since we're just looking for initial customers, we're looking for someone who can basically pilot the system and will provide all free customer support, free training and onboarding, and free SME vetted content. And Bryan talked a little bit about what that content is. So we have basically questions, position templates, question sheets, and basically a ton of skills that you can use to then apply to your interviews and remove any biases that are typically seen in the process. So a link to the resources. So like I said, this PowerPoint will go out to everyone. But to review our blogs, you can go to hirepeak.com, hit the blog tab, and see all of the articles that we've created. And then for any tutorials on the system, you can click on that link as well, and you can see videos of how the system is being used and how it can apply to your current process. And then we have the bias test. So this is from Harvard. You guys can log in and find out what types of biases you, as a interviewer, recruiter, or even an HR manager, might have. So this is all great content. Point we'll actually be taking any questions. So we'll go into the support email and pull out a few questions for you guys so we can get those answered. If anyone else has any questions right now, feel free to use the chat. So that's a little bubble on the orange Join Me tab. You can click on that and type a quick question in, and we'll answer that. Now, so the first question is, how do I get my information, for example, positions and candidates into the system? So this question is from Adam. Well, Adam, so our system actually integrates with an ATS system. bite, whether you're using Greenhouse, whether it's something a little bit more specific like Talent Rover, actually we have integration points with those systems, and all of that information will be directly sent into HirePeak, and you can then just conduct your interviews using their HirePeak system. The second question, let's go with Rohit. So Rohit asks, can I create my own question sheets and content? Yes, Rohit, you can. The way that works is we provide a ton of content for you, but anything additional, we can actually sit with you, generate a question sheet, generate scorecards that reflect specific positions and the specific skills required for that position. And that helps you create that consistent process, right? So going back to the 3 pillars, structure, content, and data. So our job is to make sure that you hire the best candidates, whether that's through using that structure and keeping it consistent, or through the content, having the right information during the interview to ask your candidates, or whether it's data and being able to generate reports off of those positions and really provide that value for your hiring managers as well. So we'll take one more question, and then all the other questions we'll actually send out an email to everyone as well to answering those. So how do I access the system? That's a very good question. So this is from viewer 14. I'm not sure if you're still on, but so to answer your question, HirePeak is a SaaS system, so all you have to do is go to hirepeak.com. You can just log in. You can create an account right now, start using the system. We have a free 30-day trial set up for everyone, and you can feel free to reach out to me, and we can help you, with any additional training and getting set up. Cool. So that's all the questions for now. If anyone has anything else, please feel free to email support@hirepeak.com. And lastly, remember, there's only so much you can do alone, but together we can accomplish great things. And in this case, we can remove that bias and hire the best candidates. So thank you, everyone, for attending our webinar. This is PowerPoint, and once again, feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
To kill record.